I have to confess something to you guys. These hands were not made for army painting. When it comes to painting display models or single figures for characters in armies, that's a good trait. I like to savor the process. But when it comes to actually finishing an army of miniatures, let's just call it a roadblock. That's why in today's video, I've enlisted some help.
Hi.
Say hello to Jay from Eons of Battle, a prolific army painter and YouTuber. He's completed over 3,000 minis in his painting career. With 11 completed armies and countless skirmish forces, if he can't help me get my army finished, no one can.
I've watched you paint up your boys.
Cabal the Withering Sun.
Your boys, and I think it can be done faster. Hopefully without dropping that sweet, sweet quality too much. A handful of pretty boys is not an army make. We gotta pump up those numbers.
Unfortunately, that's true.
A little over a year ago, I threw down the gauntlet that we would both knock out our Drakari armies, and credit where credit is due, you've got a good number of guys painted, and they're looking pretty spicy.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Now it's time to get the lead out and get some stuff done. And so I think you're gonna paint up a guy the way you would, and I'm gonna paint up one of your guys the way I would. And we'll see if we can come up with a little something that'll let us knock out all the Cabalites.
I'm looking forward to finishing an entire unit in a video for once. We got some Cabalites in front of us. Let's get started.
Let's start by showing our baseline, my current paint plan for the Cabalites.
You've seen this process a million times, and you know it starts with a khaki base coat through the airbrush. I hit the whole model because the scheme will rely on having khaki as an undertone. Next up, with the airbrush and a much brighter bleached bone color, I hit it with some highlights. I target areas like the middle of the chest, the shoulders, top of the head, the knees, the forearms, and I make sure to have a fairly diluted paint. Not because that only helps with speckling through the airbrush, but it also helps to gradually apply the highlight. After that, I do a shading with a mixture of sepia and brownish red ink. I like to do my shading after my highlighting because I find that if I get any speckling with my highlighting step, I can really pare it down with this much smoother and easier to apply ink. Next up, the black fatigues. I don't have a great way of doing that, so I wanted to ask Jay. All right, Jay, I got a question for you. So I don't really have a great way to paint the black fatigue uniform of the Drakari. I've tried speed paint, I'm not happy with it, and the alternative of base coating it and highlighting it just seems like a massive time sink. You got any ideas?
Yeah, I think the base coat would be a waste of time. I think you were on the right track with speed paint.
Okay.
I think you just didn't do it right.
What's the trick?
The trick is thinning it a lot. Like for the black, you probably want to do 50% at least.
50%, okay. And then how do you get like something that's actually close to black though? I fear that'll be something too close to gray if I do that.
Multiple coats.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. In addition to thinning the speed paint with speed paint medium, I also add a little bit of water following Jay's advice to thin it out and make it less viscous. But I did find that this was a little bit too thinned out and I added more black to the mixture and it still worked just as good but was dark like I like it. Next, I base coat all of the green parts, and this part definitely takes a long time. Just like over black, base coating over a bright color like cream tends to require a couple of layers to reach full opacity. But I like the starkness of an actual base coat when compared to a contrast paint. With that green complete, I then do the silver base coats. I'm avoiding the smaller details like the spikes on his legs and his shoulders because I have a silver highlighting step and I might as well just hit those with the brightest silver possible instead of wasting time hitting them with a darker silver. One thing I learned about doing this scheme was that it's really easy to get paint on the khaki armor and mess it up. And so instead of doing what I would normally do, which is shading the armor and then highlighting it, I keep that step for the end because not only does it highlight the armor, but also allows me to correct a lot of mistakes like getting the black on the armor, the green, you name it. Next up, pretty simple, I hit the singular bag on his hip with a brown speed paint. Now with all the major colors in place, we're gonna do one big wash step. I'm gonna hit all of the military green components with a brown wash and hit the silver stuff with a blue wash.
While I have that brown wash out, I also apply it to the areas of the white armor that will be harder for me to recess shade manually with normal acrylic paint later on.
With the white armor looking good and shaded, I can now apply my contrast paint of a Yandin yellow to get a few yellow accent panels. Now with a thinned down brown acrylic paint, I'm going to paint in all of the recesses. Dark Elder actually has some great segmented armor that look good with sharp recess shading, and it isn't too hard to do if you have some brush control. Normally I would apply a gloss varnish, oil wash the mini, and then clean it up and matte varnish it. But because Jay is here right now, I want to do a step that I think is going to be equivalent in time and also outcome. With my shading done, I can now do the white edge highlight on all of my cream colored armor, and like I said previously, we can use this step to clean up some mistakes while also getting nice definition on all that great armor. Next up, I'm gonna apply some silver highlights. To the very small details, I use a super bright silver, and to the somewhat larger details, like the gun, I apply a medium silver, because a bright silver would be too aggressive and require multiple layers to transition up to in brightness. Next up, I highlight the military green, but not much of it, just the dick towel, as Jay lovingly puts it, right in the front, because it's visible and obvious, and highlights there will have more of an impact on the smaller, harder to see details. Coming close to the end here with the combat drugs, which I do with a teal spot color, which is a simple base coat of an acrylic teal paint, and then a highlight with that same paint, but mixed with a bit more white. I like to apply it in a dotty way, just to make it feel like there's chemicals coursing through the tubes. Last but certainly not least, we apply our Molotov chrome to the big visor. Again, this paint applies much better through an airbrush, but is doable with a paintbrush if you think of it kind of like a contrast paint or a speed paint. You want to flood the surface in a controlled way. If you apply it thinly, it will look like any other metallic paint. And that's it. Let's see if Jay can compete with that.
I started out by examining Scott's finished minis with a fine-tooth comb. You know what? Dark Elder aren't much to look at from behind. I think I can get something that looks a lot like this, just much, much faster. I played around with Scott's paint collection, seeing what works for recreating the scheme. I guess I could have asked him, he was sitting right next to me, but that would make it way too easy. Step 1, I hosed down the entire mini with a light tan. And here's where I diverted from Scott's lovely, precise airbrush highlights and shadows. I made up a wash. I took a big, nasty brush, loaded up with the wash, and quickly coated the entire mini. With the whole mini coated in a layer of speed paint soup, I wicked away the excess paint. While the paint was slightly wet, I added a little bit more bony matter soup to get the saturation higher in the recesses. This did a lot of work for me. Shading, recess shading, bumping up the saturation. Now it's time to use a little airbrushing of white to brighten up the colors. Ink runs so easy through the airbrush, I don't mind adding this step to the formula. With these colors on, I think I've got them just about right. Now to clean it up a little bit, I use some white and brown to crisp up the speed paint, edge highlighting with white and brown in the recesses. I think this got me really, really close, and it did come together in a timely manner. All right, so Scott, I got the tan, the shading, highlighting, edge highlighting, all done. What do you think?
Let's take a look here. I'm thinking two things. One, I want the shadow color to be a little bit warmer. And two, some of the washing is a little bit too aggressive on the sides, but I see what you're doing to achieve the airbrush look. And if you're doing it faster than it, I think it's a good attempt for sure.
We're pretty neck and neck on these models right now, but I think the way I'm doing it would get a lot faster the more Capelites I was painting. Now I can tackle the other strong colors, like the black. I threw this over the clothing, gun, ponytail, and his little spiky shoulder doodads. Another color Scott uses is green. I don't want to touch this color more than once, so I mixed up an army green similar to Scott's color, and I threw this over his loincloth. Now for the yellow. I started out using a contrast Imperial Fist, but Scott showed me the magic of Iandan yellow. This is a really nice orangey color. I used a dry brush of gunmetal to almost instantly finish the blaster and knife, and a sponging of bright silver adds a little bit of texture without adding much time. Each new color added to the mini covers less and less, so although I feel like I got a slow start, I rocketed to the finish. Now that I'm just about done, I feel like I can almost slow down a little bit and do a little bit more detail. I base coated his combat drugs and science tubes with blue. Then I did a highlight of light blue. And because this is such a small detail, it won't add much time to get specular with a few reflections of white. Now the only thing left is Molotov chrome, and I'm glad I'm using Scott's because this stuff is expensive. This stuff is tricky to put on, but I can't argue with that finish. With the Molotov on there, I put the bottle aside to dry, and I looked over at Scott, who wasn't quite done with his Capelite yet.
Allow me to briefly jump in and mention two new items on the web store. A limited edition bust of a scrappy cheerleader that I only have 400 of. Over half are already gone and more are going every single day. If you want to try something new and you like the idea of having more space on a miniature for creative expression, this model was designed for you. That was the intent when I made it. I also painted it up in a video last week if you want to see how I interpreted it. I also have a new t-shirt on the web store that is for the dog lovers in the hobby. That's an homage to my two beautiful dogs, Bullet and Crusher, and is some kind of two-headed knockoff Cerberus. The spit spells paint more minis. You can find both these items at miniac.co, linked down in the description. All right, back to the video.
All right, Jay, we're both done. They're both based up in the exact same way. Let's swap and take a look at how we did.
Yours is crispy.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yours is really close to how I painted my models. Oh, I also like how you painted the blue. I don't know what these tubes are on the back.
Little science tubes.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to get more teal onto the model. Let me ask you, how familiar are you with my paint plan?
I watched your video once.
Okay, so not very.
Yeah.
You don't know the paints I use and the process and stuff like that. Honestly, for sitting down, not knowing it, and just guessing, this is like 90% of the way there. So that's like super solid. You decided to go to hell with my gun style?
Yeah, I didn't want to pick out all those parts with the green.
Fair, fair. You did an all-over wash on the khaki armor, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so impressive because whenever I do an all-over wash on anything, it just dulls and drags everything down with it. But you were able to wash it and still able to maintain kind of the brightness of the khaki. How did you do that?
I super thinned the wash, and then I also, after the wash, did a delicate slight zenithal of white, which brightened everything up.
Like a diluted white ink or something like that?
Just straight whiting through the airbrush.
Oh, you just applied it on top of everything?
On top of everything.
Oh, okay. I want to see that footage. That's interesting.
I think your guy looks better than my guy,
Okay.
but I will say that if I had to do a bunch of this guy in a day versus a bunch of that guy in a day, I think I could definitely do that guy, and it would be a struggle to do this guy.
Well, let's find out tomorrow if it's a struggle for me.
Spoilers, it is.
All right, it is top of day 2.
I've got 5 guys, much like the sandwich shop. You've got 4 guys in a banner, so it's a pretty even match.
So we're gonna see who can paint these guys faster and also figure out how long per model it takes. It's one thing to time active painting time. It's another entirely just to time the actual session. Airbrush cleaning, mixing paints, etc. Let's see something.
I think you keep that.
So Jay, you and I have a somewhat different idea about the end goal of army painting. What is your end goal for army painting?
For me, when I want to paint an army, it becomes a challenge of, I want an army. What can I do to make that happen? Because it can't be spending all the time in the world on every single guy. And usually there is an end date that is kind of close because I want to play with that army. So what do I have to do to get a result that I like in the amount of time that I have to give the project? And usually that means a lot of contrast paint, a lot of washes, a lot of airbrushing, and then I can spend a little bit of time on the stuff that I find super fun. On your guys, the test tubes on their butts was just a little thing. It only took a few seconds to do the highlights on those test tubes, but it was super fun. I feel like every part of a mini needs some good looking colors on it, but usually that's not the really, really fun parts of a painting process. It's usually the little decals or making that guy's boob yellow or the sword. Like you find these little things and those are the things that really, really bring you a lot of joy. Not necessarily getting pink for my guys or tan for your guys everywhere, like on 80% of the miniature.
Jay, you know Dark Arthur have combat drugs and they have tubes all over them, on their shoulders, on their rib cages. But I'm curious, have you ever noticed the combat drugs that come out right there?
Ooh. That's a penis.
When you're done painting a model or a unit or an army, do you ever have regrets?
Oh yeah, for sure. I have regrets, but those regrets are they don't hurt me much because I can always go back and fix it or paint more on top of them. But for sure there are times where I'm like, that's a mistake, but we'll see if I notice in an hour.
Okay, so like a mistake, but not like I wish I had tried harder on this thing.
Yeah, no, because I can always come back and try harder. I don't get super hung up on the quality of the gaming miniatures that I'm producing right at this moment, especially if it's the first time I'm painting that unit. I know I'm not gonna be like 110% perfectly happy with it, but I know that the next time I paint it, they'll be a little bit better. And then the next time I paint it, they'll be a little bit better. And so on and so on. And so I know I'm not gonna nail that perfection this time, but I'm gonna get there if I continue with this army.
How would you respond to someone who does struggle with that? Someone who's like, I want all my models to be perfect, who labors over that. Like, what could you say to help them, to convince them that that isn't the strategy?
That is a tough one, but like, what is perfect? Like, are the minis we painted today perfect?
I think to me, yeah. They're not literally, but they're the level that I want them to be, which I think is a really important concept for anyone who's watching this video right now. Everyone gets to define that for themselves. These are perfect for me. But I guess it's really hard to define that without knowing it. And you don't know it until you do it over and over and over again, right?
I don't have an easy answer. I'm perfectly fine with my Necrons looking different than my Black Templar, and I don't want to go back and touch up my Necrons. And I kind of do want to go back and touch up my Black Templar. I don't know why. I keep my Space Marines at a higher level than my Necrons. But Necrons are different looking than Space Marines. Necrons are naked. That makes it easier to paint them.
Do you think it's because you're more excited about the Black Templars than you are the Necrons?
I think Necrons are so simple that the end product is the entire squad, where Space Marines are complicated enough that each guy can be like its own exciting thing.
For me, I have an end goal in my head about what I want them to look like. And I like to imagine that I'm able to do anything I can to get to that end goal, like whatever the time limit is, whatever my energy levels are for being creative. The only thing that's important is just getting to that vision in my head. We have an end goal of Adepticon, and I'm gonna try my hardest to get to that point, and likely everything will have some paint on it, but I will continue to paint afterwards to get to where I wanna get if I don't finish on time at the quality level that I wanna get to, you know? Jay, pop quiz. What is the name of a leader in a witch unit?
In a witch unit? Oh, so it's not the succubus.
Starts with an H.
I thought I knew this.
Not a real fan.
Is it your mom?
Yeah! No, it's called a Hecatrix.
Yeah, I know. I should have known that.
On the flip side of army painting, you have kind of display painting. And I'm kind of curious, like, what that means to you in contrast to army painting.
Yeah, to me, display painting usually means boring painting. There are models that I try to paint really, really, really well on because I'm really inspired by that miniature. But at the end of the day, if it's not a toy, it doesn't do anything for me.
Okay.
If it can only sit on the shelf and look pretty, I don't care.
In my head, army painting and display painting are kind of similar. The thing is, the project changes. I may spend 30 to 50 hours painting a single fig, and I may spend 30 to 50 hours painting 2 units in an army, but I'm expending the same level of creative effort on both of them. You know what I mean? But it's just spread out over more models. Do you kind of see it the same way or no?
I have tried in the past to paint like really, really nice competition level models, but in general, I just want an Archon, or I just want Orc Boys, or I just want this Wraith Lord finished. And so I'm just gonna sit down and make it happen. 4 hours. Thank you. 4 hours and 20 minutes to get the 5 guys all painted, based, got everything on them, got the Maltau chrome.
They're looking pretty spicy. I'm over here with one last model and not done yet, but I would say I'm like at the 90% mark.
It's early afternoon. It's kind of too bad that you don't have more cab lights.
I mean, I do have more.
You do have more.
At that moment, he knew. He f***ed up. All right, it is 3:52 on Tuesday, just a mere hour or a couple minutes before the end of this last day of you being here, and all of the Cabalites are done.
20 cabbies.
I have no other model in my army that I have so many of as Cabalites now, and it's awesome to see them all together.
You rank them all up, it's hard to tell the difference.
So we started at about, what, 9:30, 9 a.m., and it's 3, and you probably finished a good 2 hours before I did. So it's interesting about paint schemes, about how much time you lose in the in-between phases, you know? Do you think about that often?
A little bit. Doing different steps adds a lot of time. Like, if I need to put on decals, that adds a lot of time per mini. Masking adds a lot of time per mini. Just doing like another airbrush step adds a lot of time to each mini. Priming and zenithaling, it takes a surprisingly long time. I like that you made his boob yellow.
Yes.
That's a fun little touch.
I think it's awesome to finish a thing, and it feels so good to finish a thing that now I'm kind of like addicted to the idea of finishing stuff for the Dark Eldar. You know, the last couple of weeks haven't been as successful, and so I almost want to spend a week just like finishing a bunch of things that are almost done, just so I can see them done and have the same experience and joy that I'm having right now.
I mean, the day is still young. You want to paint 10 more Cabalites?
No, I don't. Jay, thank you for coming here and helping me out finish my Cabalite Warriors. On the off chance that the many people do not know where you are and where to find you, where are you on the internet?
Ian's Battle and iansbattle.com.
Honestly, Jay is one of my favorite content creators to watch on YouTube right now. His excitement is infectious. It's so fun to watch him because he just loves everything he's doing. You can feel that through the camera. Definitely check him out. I'll have him linked down in the description below. If you like this video, there are several other in the Dark Eldar series you can check out in a playlist that's gonna be linked at the end of this video. If you like my channel and you wanna support it, there are a number of ways you can do that. All things linked down in the description below. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to...